Hello everybody and welcome back to 89 Games. Once again we're here with another Gloomhaven in 2025 guide with the Cragheart this time. One of my favorite starting characters. He's got a lot of versatility, he's got range, he's got melee, he's got healing, he's tanky. So let's go ahead and get into it and start talking about his cards. So first off, we're going to start with Opposing Strike. Opposing Strike is a simple little attack 3, gain experience, but you attack the space in front and behind you in this pattern on the card here. Pretty decent overall as just an attack 3. It's a little hard to line this pattern up and get the 2 attacks out of it though, so maybe not as useful as it could be. And then on the bottom of it, we've got the next 6 melee attacks targeting you gain Retaliate 2. Now, that's actually pretty good because that's 6 different attacks against you. That can last most of a scenario if you activate that. So even though it's a burn, it's actually a really good one, especially for a Retaliate 2. And if you're going to be playing the tank role and being up front and getting hit a lot, this can do a lot of damage to the enemies over the course of its life. The initiative 46 on this one's not that great, and that's kind of a theme with the Cragheart. It's his biggest weakness, I would say, is he has a lot of really just crappy initiatives. You can see from the starting cards here that we've got like a lot of 40s and some 30s, 50s, 60s, just not good numbers, not for good for going late, not good for going early. So you should expect to typically go later with the Cragheart. He's got one card that can help you go early when you really need it. But other than that, you're going to be going kind of whenever you go. And you're going to have to be versatile to handle whatever situation there is when your turn does come up, which is one of the Cragheart's strength, is his versatility, as I mentioned in opening. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to Crushing Grasp here. Crushing Grasp is an attack 3, immobilize, it activates grass, and then the bottom is a loot 1. So the attack 3 immobilize is actually pretty good, especially if you're up front and you plan on attacking and then moving away. You can immobilize enemies so they can't come after you or after anybody else. So it has its uses. It's a good attack 3 regardless, and then the immobilize sometimes is useful, sometimes not as much, just depending on if you moved first or you moved after. And then the bottom loot 1, you know my opinion on the loot cards. If you need the money, they're fine, but generally I feel they're kind of a waste of an ability most of the time. This one also has an attack or an initiative of 35, so again we're kind of at just that meh initiative range there. So not much to say on Crushing Grasp. I mean I use it as a basic attack. I don't use it that often. It's probably one that I'll take out sooner rather than later. And then we're going to move on to Avalanche. Avalanche top is an attack 4, and if you have the grass to consume, which Cragheart has quite a few ways to make his own, activate his own element and then use that element, the grass in this case. Anything that uses that is really not too hard to use if you just plan ahead a little bit. So it can be an attack 5 on 2 targets next to each other with 2 XP if you have the grass or 1 without, and then it is a burn. So I want to make sure I have the grass when I do use this. And I do like this attack. It does come in handy sometimes. It can quickly take out 2 enemies, especially in the early game. An attack 5 with a good modifier, you can kill a lot of the level 1 enemies. So I like this one as a burn attack. The bottom is useful in a utilitarian sort of way. You can create 2 single hex obstacles and empty hexes adjacent to you. So this is really good for blocking off enemies and making a path. Depending on the map, you can make a path where they can only get to like one space to where you are, and then you can put your tank in that space and hold it and have everybody else throw range attacks from safety. So depending on the scenario that you're playing, this has a lot of unique uses that you could get out of it, plus it activates grass. But there is a card later, which we'll talk about when we get there, that this card pairs with really well. So Avalanche, I like it. I usually keep it in for a while. And then the initiative 75 isn't bad for going late. It is our highest initiative number besides 82. Or I'm sorry, 82 and 87, 77. I guess I lied. There's a lot of higher initiatives, but it's good for going later, which again is what you're going to be doing a lot with the Cragheart anyway. So then we're going to move on to Rumbling Advance. This is one of my favorite cards for 2 reasons. First off, the top, a heal 4, range 2. That's really, really good. That's really strong. The Cragheart can take a lot of damage and be down to like 2 or 3 health, and can heal himself almost back to full health with this card, and then the bottom of Earthen Clod here also gives him another heal too. So he can heal 6 in one turn very easily on himself. Of course, that whole turn is healing, but he does have a good heal ability there. And of course, it is range 2 as well, so you could use this on an ally, which a heal 4 that's reusable is really strong. Plus, it activates grass again for those grass empowered attacks. The bottom is a move 2. All adjacent allies and enemies suffer 1 damage. I really like the bottom of this one. I use this quite a bit. Now, it can be hard sometimes to not do damage to your allies, so if you're playing with someone else, you might need to ask them, it's like, hey, is it okay if I do 1 damage to you to damage these 3 enemies? And usually that's an okay thing, like 1 damage isn't that big a deal, but doing this to multiple enemies, especially if they're shielded enemies, this is a really good way to get damage and guaranteed damage, even though it's only 1. The fact that you can move first and then do that damage and then still hit them with an attack, that extra 1 damage really does add up and help out. Plus, it also activates grass for us. And then Initiative 29 is, again, just meh. Then we move on to Massive Boulder here. I really like this one too, also because it gives you free extra damage. So it's an attack 3, range 3, already good, but then all allies and enemies adjacent to the target suffer 1 damage. Now, with this being a ranged attack, you're less likely to be damaging your allies with it, and it's good to hit like a group of like there's 3 enemies, you hit the guy in the middle, and you can do the extra 1 damage to the one on either side there, and get that extra damage spread around. So it ends up being kind of like attack 5, it would just spread around a little bit. And again, it activates grass. A lot of these cards activate grass. And then the bottom is a move 4, which is really good mobility for the Cragheart, which will be a challenge for him later on, depending on what upgrades you take. He doesn't have a whole lot of mobility. So having a move 4 is definitely a help to help you catch up to your party and to get into melee range if you need to. Then the next one we have is Backup Ammunition. Backup Ammunition adds target on your next 4 ranged attack actions. So for the next 4 ranged attacks, you'll get to attack 2 targets instead of 1, or if it's already a multi-target attack, then obviously you add 1 more. I don't usually use this one because I don't always play, I mean, I do use the range attacks on the Cragheart, obviously, because he has them, but I try to play the Cragheart more as a tank and up front, so I don't really use this card too much. The bottom is a move 3, which is good for that mobility that we're talking about, so it might be worth keeping around for a little while just because of that. But this is usually one that I trade out pretty quickly, and I just don't get a whole lot of use out of it. But if you have another tank in the party and you're playing the Cragheart as a ranged character mainly, then this add target thing would be awesome because it's doubling your damage basically for 4 attacks. So not necessarily a bad one, just not the way I usually play him. And then we'll move on to Rock Tunnel here. So the top, destroy 1 adjacent obstacle, get an experience point. Not the most useful card. The experience point is nice because it's easy to just go up to an obstacle and destroy it for an experience point, but I really don't like this one unless you're playing with the scenarios where there's obstacles that are literally blocking your path or make you take a longer path around a scenario. Then this would make sense, but most of the time, this isn't one that I keep around. The bottom is a move 5 with jump. Immobilize all enemies that you move through, gain XP, and burn. As a burn move, I mean, I know it immobilizes enemies that you move through, but this is another one that I don't keep in my hand, I don't use. And there might be a way to use this if you're going for more of a control build with the immobilize and things like that, maybe, but this is usually one that I also set aside very early. Unstable Upheaval. Now this is one of my favorite cards for him, especially early on. So you attack 3, target all adjacent enemies. If you have grass, you consume it, and it targets enemies up to 2 hexes away instead, and then all adjacent allies suffer 2 damage. So this becomes an attack 3 on an entire room if you plan it right. Usually after the first turn or 2, all the enemies kind of condensed and come around your mercenaries. You jump in the middle with Cragheart, you use this, and you hit the entire room for an attack 3. Very, very strong. It is a burn, but it's well worth it. I use this card every scenario. I end up using it. And then you also get, of course, that XP point and an extra one if you have the grass to consume. Now make sure you have the grass to consume when you use this, otherwise it's not nearly as good. But attacking the whole room with this, and then you add in a power potion to that, maybe some eagle-eye goggles if you have them available for him. And this is a massive attack. This is a room clearing attack in some cases, depending on the enemy's health. So I really like this one. The bottom is all allies suffer 1 damage, but they suffer that damage to get shield 2, and then you get 2 experience points for it. So hurt everybody in your party, but everyone, no matter where they are, gets shield 2. This could be really good for when a big attack is coming, or some elites in the room have an attack that's a multi-attack, and they're going to hit everybody really hard. This could be good situationally in those situations, although I almost always use this. Actually, I can't even think that I've ever used the bottom. I always use this one for the top. And plus the initiative, sometimes I just use this for the initiative alone and then just use a basic move on it. because the initiative is what will help you the one time that the Cragheart will be able to go early enough to pull off something that has to be done before anyone else moves or before the enemies move. So hang on to this card, if for nothing else, probably the initiative, but also that top attack is really, really strong. Then moving on to Crater. Crater is an attack 3, range 3, another good range attack. If you have grass, you can add push 2 and an experience point to that. So this is a good all-around attack. Also, if you have the grass and there's traps around, the push is really, really good for doing some extra damage. So all-around Crater is a pretty strong card on the top here. And also on the bottom, as the bottom has all adjacent enemies and allies suffer 1 damage. You move forward, you jump. All adjacent allies and enemies suffer 1 damage again, wherever you land. And then if you have grass, it becomes 2 damage instead of 1 each time. So what this means is if I have grass, I like to use this when I'm like surrounded by enemies. I use it, everyone around me took 2 damage, and then I land next to more enemies, and then they take 2 damage. This is spreading around a lot of suffer damage, a lot of just damage that can't be negated, which is really, really strong. Especially with this card, I like to pair the Boots of Striding, so I get a couple extra movement to make sure I can like jump into a room and right into the middle and do a bunch of damage to a group of enemies. And then pairing with this could be good to pair the Unstable Upheaval, although you'd have to decide which ability you want to use the grass on, as you can only use it once. So doing the 1 suffer damage instead and then attacking a whole room might work. Or if everyone's right next to each other, it might be a case where you'd use this without doing the 2 hexes away. But it could be a powerful combination with these 2 cards. Not something likely to use a lot, but I think I've done it once or twice. But either way, I do like the bottom move on this with the damage. It is a burn, but it does a lot of suffer damage if you're surrounded. It's really good for just eating through shields and things like that. So then moving on to Dirt Tornado here. Dirt Tornado is an attack 1, range 2, but has that huge area pattern there, the 7 hex pattern. And then if you have grass, you get 1 more attack with it and an experience point. And then it muddles all allies and enemies in the target area. So you may have noticed Cragheart does have a lot of abilities that can hurt your allies as well as your enemies, so you do have to be a little careful. But this Dirt Tornado is one that I haven't used a whole lot, but it's not necessarily a bad attack. It's just the situation where it's useful doesn't happen as often as you might think, because you do need to have, 3-4 enemies to make the most effect out of this be in that area. And if you're playing in a smaller party, you're less likely to have that many enemies because there's less enemies on the map. But, the muddling is really good for weakening the enemy's turn. And then an attack 2, if you add something that gives you extra attack to that, make it an attack 3, then it's not really that bad. It's pretty good with a big area. The bottom is a move 3. Again, good for mobility because Cragheart does lack in that department. And then we'll move on to Earth and Clod here, the last of the level 1 cards. Earth and Clod is an attack 2, range 5. You have grass, you can consume it to immobilize, you gain 1 XP. So Earth and Clod is a good range attack only because of the range. The attack power itself isn't that great, but with range 5, it helps you, if you only have 2 or 3 movement, get to a doorway and at least hit something in that new room that just opened up instead of just wasting a whole turn. So I kind of like to use it for that. Like, I know that I'm probably not going to get in range with anything else, so I'll use this with the hopes that I can hit something in the room and not completely waste Cragheart's turn. And then the bottom is the heal 2 range 3, which I mentioned earlier, which combined with Rumbling Advance's top here gives you a total of heal 6. And this one's range 3, so a little bit better range for healing allies. But again, that's a heal 6 either on yourself if you play both these cards at the same time, heal 6 for yourself, heal 6 for an ally, or split it up. And I've actually recently started a new playthrough with some friends where I'm playing as Cragheart, and I played kind of a heal build with him. Now, granted, I only played up to, I think, level 2 with him because I had a really easy retirement. I already retired him just this last session that we played. But I picked some healing cards, and he's actually a really effective healer. So he can be kind of a heal tank, or it can be a heal support with some range. Like I said, there's a lot of versatility to the way you can play Cragheart, which I think is what makes him so much fun to play. There's a lot of different ways you can play him. So don't underestimate the power of his heals. Even if the only 2 heals you ever take are Rumbling Advance and Earth and Clod, still really good for keeping your party up and keeping yourself up. So then we'll move on into the X cards here. Heavy Swing. Now this is one of my favorites of the early cards because it's an attack 3, it's push 1, and you can push the target into hexes that contain obstacles. And In each case that you destroy an obstacle, the target suffers 2 damage and you gain 1 XP. So I guess in theory, although I've never tested this, but I guess in theory, if you had an item or something that could add more push to this attack, then, or an ability, then you could push them through multiple obstacles and they would suffer 2 damage for each obstacle they went through. But either way, just the attack 3 and then pushing an enemy into an obstacle for a suffer 2 damage makes this basically an attack 5 with a 2 guaranteed, no matter what your modifier is. So I really do like the top of heavy swing here. And that's usually one I'll probably take out like backup ammunition, I'll put heavy swing in. And then the bottom of it is also really good if you want to use your range attacks, because it's an add +1 attack to all your range attacks this round. So if you're in a good position and you don't have to move, you can activate the bottom of this, and then you can do something like the top of Crater with the extra push, or maybe Massive Boulder. And then if you do use backup ammunition, you're playing more of a ranged build, you'd have that extra target as well, and you'd be getting this extra attack to that. So a lot of power build up there if you want to play him that way, you're playing a ranged build. But I really do like this one for the top, with that attack 3, push 1, and then they take damage through obstacles. So I'm going to put that one in, and then on 53, Initiative 53, Forceful Storm, it's an attack 3, range 3, disarm. You gain 1 XP for each enemy in the targeted area. It's a rare wind activation for the Cragheart, and then it consumes, it's a burn card. Now it does have that little 3 pattern, and it looks like you can also add with enhancement, you could add 1 more space to that pattern there. Now this one is a burn. It does do disarm though, and disarm is really, really strong, especially if you got an enemy that's about to do a really powerful attack, and you can disarm 2 or 3 of them with this. Really good, but it is also a burn because of that disarm, and I find this one very situational compared to some of the other cards. Again, the way I play him more of a tank, more of a frontline fighter than a ranged character, so this is usually not a card that I put in. Although that said, the bottom of this one is add +2 attack to all of your melee attacks this round. Now I have used that before, and it is very, very, very powerful. So if you are playing the melee build like I like to play, there is an argument for keeping Forceful Storm in just for the bottom. The only problem is, again, with it being a bottom, is that you can't move, so you already have to be in position, which makes it kind of hard to use. And that's what X cards generally for all characters are. They're interesting cards with a lot more going on usually, and they're a little more difficult to use, and they're more situational. But when you get in the right situation, they're very, very powerful for, you know, cards that are available to you at level 1. So with that said, let's move on to Nature's Lift. Now this is the other heal card that I took that I normally don't use when I play through with a Cragheart. So it's a heal 2, range 3, target 2. This is really great for being a team healer, because you can heal 2 of your teammates for 2 really quickly, and then if you're in range, you can use the bottom of Earth and Claw as well to throw another heal 2 and really spread heals around for your team. So I like this one. If you're going to play more of a healer role for the Cragheart, this top is really, really good. And then the bottom is one that I don't use too often. Again, if you're going for a ranged build, it probably has a good argument to be used. On your next 6 range attack actions, while air is currently infused, consume air to add +2 range to the entire attack action. So +2 range is really strong. The biggest problem I find with this card though is that there's not a lot of things that activate air for the Cragheart. So you'd have to rely on someone else to be activating that air element for you, because I think the bottom or the top of Forceful Storm here is the only one that actually activates wind for the Cragheart. He has nothing else. Everything else is grass, 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 earth. So yeah, the bottom of this one is difficult to use just because that element's not going to be available very often. So that's why I wouldn't take this for the bottom, but I would take it for the top. So, and if I was going to take that, we'd probably end up taking something like Rock Tunnel out, throw Nature's Lift in there, and that would be my level 1 build. That's the one that I played with most recently, this setup right here. So with that said, let's go ahead and start moving into the leveled cards. With level 2, we get Explosive Punch or Sentient Growth. So, Explosive Punch is destroy 1 adjacent obstacle, and you attack 4 all enemies adjacent to that destroyed obstacle. Activates grass, 2 XP, it's a burn. So this one is a very, very strong card situationally. If you have those scenarios where there's an obstacle, for instance, the second scenario in the Gloomhaven campaign is the boss fight, and in that second room, there's an altar, and all the enemies are standing next to it. If you can get the Cragheart all the way to that altar and punch it with this attack, then you can attack 4, like, I think with 4 players, I think it's 3 enemies that are around that altar. When you initially go in the room, you can hit all 3 of them with this, including the boss. So that's very strong, but you have to have an obstacle, or else this is useless. So it's a situational card. It's one that if you took with you, you wouldn't necessarily use in every scenario. However, the bottom is a move 4, which is very, very strong because, again, our move mobility is limited. And since I took out, for my build here, I took out backup ammunition, rock tunnel, I only have 1 or 2 bigger moves. So we got massive boulder, and then, of course, crater, but it's a burn, dirt tornado, and that's it. We're mostly basic moves. So explosive punch would be good just because it gives you another move 4 if you need that mobility. And again, if you're playing a ranged build, then that would make sense. You'd want the mobility. But the way I play him, I have taken explosive punch most of the time in the past, and I just wait for that opportunity to use the attack the obstacle and do the attack 4 on everybody. However, the last time I played, I used sentient growth instead, and I actually really, really like it as a healer. So it's an attack 2, range 3 in that triangle pattern. Heal 2, affect all allies in the targeted area. Now, I did try this on myself. It is very specific. It's only allies. You can't heal yourself with this one. You can only heal allies. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but still good for healing those allies. Plus, it is an attack 2, range 3, on potentially 3 targets, which is good. And then the bottom is a move 2. You heal 1, all adjacent allies, and you attack 1, all adjacent enemies. So this one's, again, really, really good as a healer because you can move, heal, and attack with the bottom, and then still use like the top of Rumbling Advance to do a heal 4 and heal an ally or yourself. And then the attack itself, you can attack an enemy and heal your ally that's next to them. So I think this one's really strong. I really do like Sentient Growth now that I finally used it. So I'm going to take Sentient Growth here. We're going to add that in. So I always take out Dirt Tornado with this one, I believe, because it's basically the same. Even powered up, it's just attack 2. It's a little bit bigger. You get the muddle, but take that out, put Sentient Growth in. Now, I hurt myself again with mobility, so we're going to fix that, though, with the items later. All right, moving on to level 3 then. Clear the Way and Blunt Force. So Clear the Way is the card I talked about, goes really well with the bottom of Avalanche. So in the bottom of Avalanche, we create 2 single hex obstacles, right? So Clear the Way at the top, move 1 adjacent single hex obstacle to an empty hex within range 4. Attack 2, target all enemies adjacent to the moved obstacle, gain experience point. If we have grass, we get +1 attack and experience. So this is how you just create your own ammunition, essentially. You use the bottom of Avalanche, you create 2 obstacles, and then you can just, if you're on a boss fight map maybe, or somewhere you don't have to move around a lot, you can just create your own ammunition with creating obstacles, and then chuck them at enemies with this, and attack everyone around wherever you put that obstacle down. Plus, the obstacle still stays intact, so you're blocking off another area of the map as well. So this card has a lot of utility, a lot of good attack power for spreading around a large area type of attack. So I really like this one. I like that combo. It's really fun to play. The bottom is a move 5 jump, destroy all obstacles and disarm all moved traps moved through. Gain 2 XP. So this could be useful if you're on a big map with a lot of traps, you know, moving through them and disarming them all. Really strong, but otherwise it's a big move for a burn, which I don't typically like because there's other ways to get big moves through items and things like that that don't burn cards. But the top of this one, I would take it for the top for sure. The bottom, or the other card, sorry, is Blunt Force, attack 4, consume grass to make it attack 8, and then you get 2 additional experience points besides the 1 experience you get regardless. So this is potentially attack 8, 3 experience. It is a burn, but this is a really strong card, a really good boss killer type of card. And then the bottom is a move 2, retaliate 1 cell for the round, gain 1 XP. Also, really, really strong. It's really nice to have that retaliate if you're playing a tanky role. And I have used both of these cards in the past, and we may even take one of these instead of another level card later on. But if I had to pick one or the other to take right now, I'm probably going to go with Blunt Force just because I'm going to get more use out of this because of the bottom with the retaliate than I will with Clear the Way. Even though this one is a lot of fun to use and does have its uses, I think we'll save it and we might pick it up later. But Blunt Force, I think, is what I would end up taking for now. So we take that, and then we can replace something like, since we're not using the obstacles yet, we could take Avalanche out and we'll throw in blunt force because typically I'm going to use this blunt force to get this attack 8 on an enemy or something like that, or on a boss. Although, could also take Crushing Grasp out here and then leave Avalanche in. I may do that. That way I keep the melee power. So moving on to level 4. At level 4, we're going to pick up Rock Slide or Kinetic Assault. Rock Slide, create 3 single hex obstacles and empty hexes within range 4. All allies and enemies adjacent to one or more of the created obstacles suffer 2 damage. So this is kind of similar to the top of Clear the Way, except for instead of moving the obstacle, we're creating new ones, but it is at range 4 still. And then instead of it being attack 2 with modifiers making it more or less, this is just a suffer 2 damage. So this is a good replacement for this one. If you want something that's just guaranteed damage, then Rock Slide's actually better than Clear the Way. So I have used this one before, and it's another one that's a lot of fun to use because, again, you can spread around a lot of damage. Now, this only works once. You can't put 3 obstacles around one enemy and he suffers 6 damage. It doesn't work that way. It only lets them suffer 2 damage for each enemy next to any of the obstacles you create with this card. But still, suffer 2 damage, really good. Really good for low level or low health enemies, shielded enemies, and then it also activates grass for you, gives you an experience point. The bottom is a move 6. Again, mobility has been an issue, so a move 6, but it has to be in a straight line. So the straight line kind of sucks because it can be hard in Gloomhaven to have a situation where moving 6 in a straight line is even possible or makes sense. But, you know, this could still be a move 3 if it's a straight line, or a new move 4. So really good for mobility help on the bottom of this one. And then the initiative on this was 81, and we haven't really talked about the initiative on the new cards, which I should have mentioned. So 21 on Blunt Force was another good pickup just because it gives us a faster initiative again. And then we're going to have that same situation here with Kinetic Assault, where we have an initiative 19. So another faster one to help us move, hopefully before enemies if we need to. The top of Kinetic Assault here is move 1, attack 4. And then the bottom is a retaliate 3 at range 3. And you get 2 XP and it lasts for the round. Now that's a burn, but if you're playing the tank role and you're out there in the middle where you're going to get hit by 4 or 5 enemies or whatever at range, then this could be a really strong card for spreading around a lot of damage really quickly. So between these two, Rock Slide and Kinetic Assault, I like them both, but I think Rock Slide's the one I would take just because the versatility of the range 4 and making the enemies suffer damage. And plus the move 6 will help with the mobility since I haven't been taking a lot of mobility cards. So if we're taking that one, this is probably the time that I'm going to take Avalanche out and we'll throw Rock Slide in. Because as much as I do like the idea of the top of Avalanche here, it doesn't get used as often as you might think. I might end up using it on only one enemy. And then, of course, we have Blunt Force that does that, and it does a lot better. So that's the reason I would take that one out. And then we're not needing those 2 obstacles. Now, if you have a scenario where it makes sense to make obstacles, you might want to put Avalanche back in for the bottom. So moving on to level 4, or rather 5. Kill 1 normal enemy with Petrify here at range 4. Create 1 single hex obstacle in the hex in which the enemy died. And then the bottom is a move 3, immobilize, target all adjacent enemies. And then with Petrify or Stone Pummel, we have attack 3, muddle, attack in this pattern with 2 in front of you, 2 behind you, and then the bottom on your next 4 melee attacks when possible, destroy an adjacent obstacle to add plus 3 attack. So, Petrify, kill 1 normal enemy. I like these, especially this one, because there's no added caveat to it. You can just kill an enemy within range 4, and then they become an obstacle. That's really powerful. You got to think, normally an enemy, it's going to take you at least 2 attacks, maybe 3 to kill them. So if you can kill them in 1, you're saving, this 1 card saves you 2 other turns from other characters or yourself, whoever is attacking that enemy. So I like this one a lot. The bottom also helps with our mobility a little bit with a move 3, immobilize all adjacent enemies at the end of the move, which isn't that good to immobilize at the end of the move unless you're trying to protect your teammates, because now everything's just going to attack you. And then the Stone Pummel, this is a good upgrade to opposing strikes because it does the exact same thing except for in a bigger area and adds muddle. So this is, if you want to go that route, this is an easy trade out for these 2 cards. And then the bottom gives you, on your next 4 melee attacks, you can destroy an adjacent obstacle if there is one to add plus 3 attack, which is really, really powerful. Even though I think I might like the retaliate better on the bottom of opposing strikes here, but Stone Pummel, if you're creating obstacles and you have them to use, and you can do this additional attack 3, that's really, really strong. But I think I would take Petrify here, because finally a card that doesn't have any extra modifiers to it. I can just straight up kill an enemy and save some turns for everybody else. So we're going to take Petrify. So as far as what to take out for Petrify, I think in this case I'm going to do Heavy Swing, put Petrify in, just because I will use the bottom and top of both of these on Heavy Swing. I won't be using the bottom a whole lot because I haven't built Cragheart around a range character. It's usually not the way I play him. And then I do like the top of Heavy Swing, with Heavy Swing there with the attack 3, push 1, and they suffer 2 damage when they go through obstacles. But this straight up kills a normal enemy. So we're going to switch out Petrify for now. And now let's move on to level 6. So at level 6, we've got Dig Pit and Cataclysm. Dig Pit creates 1/2 damage stun trap and adjacent empty hex, and it muddles all adjacent enemies. So that top is reusable. So a stun trap is really strong if you can move enemies into it, obviously. Now, if you use obstacles and different things, you can really be a controller with a Cragheart, make it so they have to go through a stun trap to get to you, and then you definitely get the stun out of it, plus it does 2 damage. But traps, unless you have pushes and pulls, that can also help you use traps. So you really kind of have to build around the idea of using traps if you're going to do that. So this card is good if you build for it. The bottom is a move to go invisible. So that's always really good, going invisible, but like I said, I like to play the Cragheart as more of a tank, so going invisible doesn't usually make sense for a tank because you want to be taking the damage for everyone else. So probably one I'm going to skip. And then Cataclysm is an attack 4 in that big area pattern around you there, or in front of you. If you have grass, it becomes attack 6 and you get 2 XP. And then it immobilizes all allies and enemies in the target area. It's a burn. So nice big attack, nice big area attack with immobilize. It is a burn, but I'm not afraid to burn with Cragheart. Cragheart has 11 cards. He has a big hand size. So, as I mentioned with Spellweaver, and really any character, don't be afraid to burn cards. You have to be wary of your hand size, and remember that, someone with 11 cards, think about the Scoundrel who only has 9 cards. You can afford to burn 2 cards very easily as the Cragheart, because then it just gives you the same hand size as the Scoundrel. And the Scoundrel can last entire scenarios with no problem. So don't be afraid to burn cards. So when you see these big attacks like, oh, but it's a burn, don't be afraid to take it. Especially this one, it's really strong. And then the bottom is move 3. If we have grass, it becomes move 6. Really, really helps with our mobility there. So I'm thinking Cataclysm would be the card I would take here. Okay, so at this point, I think the card I would replace, I would take Cataclysm, and I'm going to take out Earthen Clod. If we're playing the heal build, that hurts a little bit, but we still do have 3 other ways to heal with Rumbling Advance and Nature's Lift, Sentient Growth. So we're still good on heals, and we'll go ahead and take Cataclysm, add that one to our repertoire, and now our mobility's got a lot of help too with that extra move 6 potential on the bottom of that card. So we'll move on to level 7 with Meteor or Brutal Momentum. Meteor is create 1 3 hex triangular obstacle and empty hexes within range 3. In attack 4, immobilize all enemies adjacent to the obstacle. So similar to the other abilities that we have that create obstacles at a distance and then do damage to them around them, although this would be an upgrade to those. It activates grass and you get 2 XP. The bottom is a move 4 jump, which is actually really useful for the Cragheart. And then on Brutal Momentum, we get attack 3, push 2. For each hex, you cannot push the target because of a wall or obstacle. The target suffers 2 damage, and you gain 1 XP. So this one is more or less a straight upgrade back here to Heavy Swing, because this one has an extra push to it, and every time they can't go through something, rather than destroying the obstacle, they suffer damage for each obstacle they can't go through. Or if there's a wall, it works against the wall too. So suffering an extra 2 damage, potentially 4 damage, really, really good. The bottom, add +1 attack to all of your range attacks. If you have grass, it's 2 instead, which is an upgrade to the bottom of Heavy Swing. So this is straight up the upgrade to Heavy Swing here. So of these 2 cards, based on the build that I have created, honestly, with going with more of a melee / healer build in this situation, I'm going to go with Brutal Momentum. And then I would take out Heavy Swing, but we already did that to put something else in. So at this point, we might take something like Blunt Force out. Because, again, this is more of a boss killer card, and we're not using this a whole lot. So I think it's safe to go ahead and take that one out. We'll put Brutal Momentum in, especially since initiative-wise, yeah, we lose at 21, but we got 26 with Cataclysm. So now let's move on to level 8. At level 8, we've got Rocky End and Lumbering Bash. Rocky End, destroy all obstacles within range 2. If you have grass, it's range 3. And then you attack X, where X is twice the number of hexes the destroyed obstacles occupied. So, if you're surrounded by obstacles and you destroy a bunch of them, then this becomes attack, 7, 8, 9, like depending on how many obstacles you destroy that are within range 3 if you had grass. Most of the time, this will probably end up being like attack 3 or 4, unless you're just sitting back and creating a bunch of obstacles. So this one could be a little more difficult to use than it may seem at first. The bottom is a move 6, and the movement must end in a hex adjacent to an obstacle, so another limited movement kind of thing. Lumbering Bash has a move 2, attack 5, activate grass, 1 XP. That's solid. Any card with a move, especially that with a move 2 and then attack 5, solid top right there. At the start of your next 5 turns, for the bottom here, at the start of your next 5 turns, perform heal 2, range 2, action. So this will be the card I would take in my current situation because we're talking about a melee build and a healer build. So if I use the bottom of this, I get to heal 2 like every turn for the next 5 turns, which is really good as a healer. But if I don't want to do that, I do have the top with a move 2, attack 5, which is really strong, and I could still use a bottom move after it. So in this case, I would take Lumbering Bash. We're going to add that in. And then now we can probably take out Sentient Growth, and we'll put this one in since this can be a heal card if we need it. So now we'll move on to finally level 9 with our most powerful cards, Blind Destruction, Pulverize. Blind Destruction, attack 4, range 4. All allies and enemies adjacent to the target suffer damage equal to the damage the target suffered. That's a good group nuke. If there's a bunch of enemies grouped up, you got 3, 4 enemies together, attack 4, you get, by now at level 9, you've got a bunch of really good modifiers. You're going to get like +1, +2. So this is attack 5, attack 6 on every single one of those enemies that were adjacent to your target, plus your target. That's really strong. The bottom is a move 4, all allies and enemies adjacent to any hexes you enter suffer 2 damage. So again, another good suffer damage card on the bottom with some good movement. I really do like that one, even though it's a range attack. It's a strong attack. And then we have Pulverize, which is on the melee side of things from the looks of it. Attack 3, push 2, target all adjacent enemies. You may push the targets into hexes containing obstacles. In each case, the obstacle is destroyed. Target suffers 2 damage. You gain 1 XP. It is a burn, but it's a straight up upgrade to Brutal Momentum, which was just target 1 enemy, but it wasn't a burn. But in this case, you're targeting everything around you, everything adjacent to you, pushing them all. So this could be strong in situations. It's a situational card again. And then the bottom of it is attack 2, all adjacent enemies, move 5 with a jump, and then attack 3, all adjacent enemies. Again, a burn, but that's a lot of damage spreading around and a lot of movement all in one card. So if I had to pick between these two, though, I think I would want to go Blind Destruction here, just because that attack 4 and doing the suffer damage, and it's suffer damage equal to the damage the target suffered, which means they don't get to negate it in any way. So everyone adjacent to the target just suffers that damage. That's really strong, and it's not a burn. And I think it's just objectively better than Pulverize because it's not a burn, and it does really probably more damage on average. Plus the bottom does more damage on average too. So we're going with Blind Destruction. That's the one I would take here at level 9. Probably every single time. And then we'd have to figure out what to take out. Probably Crater, because it's essentially the same thing. But this is an upgraded version of it that I don't have to use a burn for. And there's what our level 9 build would look like. We still got some of our level 1 cards here. We've got, 5 of them? Plus an X card. And then our level cards. We took a couple of level cards out. Now let's go ahead and move on over to the items and talk about those a little bit. Okay, so for head items for the Cragheart, we're going to start with taking probably the Iron Helmet. The way I'm playing him as a tank, the Iron Helmet's really good, so he's up there. If someone pulls a ×2, it becomes a 0 instead. Really good on the defense. The other option would be possibly the Eagle Eye Goggles if they're available, just because something like our Unstable Upheaval here, which is the attack 3 on everything in the room if we set it up right, having the Eagle Eye Goggles for that to get advantage on it is really good, but it's really the only time that we really need those, except for maybe something like our big attack, like we had Blunt Force here. if we're using that, we might want to use Eagle Eye Goggles, make sure we don't miss on it. So there's an argument to be made to put the Eagle Eye Goggles on Cragheart, but since I was playing him as a tank, I went with the Iron Helmet, which is never a bad choice really for any character, because it does come in handy. It does save you from when those times twos come up and smack you really hard with a bunch of damage. So that's what I would recommend for the head, either of those two items in the beginning. And then for armor, obviously, if we're going tanky, we're going to want to pick up the hide armor, just so we've got that extra shield. And then, of course, it comes back when we rest. And then, of course, you'd want to upgrade that to the other levels of armor that you get later on. And then for hand items, we're going to go with... Now, the Battle Axe is actually not a bad choice since it's only one-handed. It gives you that extra attack pattern there. Now, you only get to use it once during a scenario, but this is something I would take if I'm using Blunt Force. Because now we're going to get an attack 8, if we have grass, attack 8 on 2 enemies with this card. So it essentially turns Blunt Force into an upgraded version, an even more upgraded version of the Top of Avalanche. So the Battle Axe isn't a bad choice for the Cragheart for some of his high single target damage attacks to make them a 2-target situation instead. And then the other item, of course, would be a shield. If we're playing him tanky, we definitely want to take a shield and its various upgrades to get that extra armor since we're going to be up in the front. And then if we're going to move over to the boots, Boots of Striding early on is definitely a must for the Cragheart. Even if you're picking more of the mobility cards, he still doesn't have a whole lot of them. So these Boots of Striding with the extra 2 move comes in handy quite often. So I would definitely take anything that increases his movement for his boots. And then moving on finally to our items, our small items. Minor Power Potion is the first pickup for sure to give you that +1 attack to Unstable Upheaval or any of our other little multi-attacks that we may have when we start, but this is the main one. Get that +1 power to your attack. It's really strong. And then the next pickup would probably just be the Healing Potion. Since we're playing the tanky version, we want something to get some more heals back for ourselves without having to use a card for it. And that will do it for my item recommendations starting out. Okay, and now with items done, let's go ahead and quickly talk about our perks for the Cragheart. So, as always, we start with the special ones down here, which the Cragheart has both the ignore negative item effects and negative scenario effects. So these are definitely the first 2 you would want to take. The order is really up to you, because if you got the armor early on, you might want to take the armor one first, just so you're not getting those negative ones added to your deck from the armor. And then, of course, you want to take Resilient here to get your negative scenario effects off. Those are the first 2 you definitely want to grab. Depending on if you have the armor or not, you may want to take one or the other first, but grab those 2 first. And then after that, now we've got, of course, taken out our negative ones. And in this case, we're replacing them with +1s. So we definitely want to do that. So now we've already added a bunch of +1s. That's really helping us there on our chances for better modifiers. And now we have one to add a -2 card and add 2 +2 cards. Now, overall, this is a net positive, so we're probably going to go ahead and take that one next, which does kind of suck because we added a -2, but now we have 3 +2s, which is really powerful. So next after that, we've got another couple where you can add one Immobilize and one Muddles. And I actually just realized that this isn't a +1, these are +2s. So I would take Daze first, even though I clicked Hobble here first. Take Daze first because it's +2s and Muddles, and then go back and take the +1 Immobilize cards. Daze is definitely the stronger of the 2 options here. So once we've added those, then we can go up here and go ahead and remove our zeros, and then we can add in our roller cards, which honestly, out of all of these, grass would probably be the most useful because you use grass for a ton of things. If you're using those wind cards, that's when Cobalt might make sense for you. But I would take probably grass, and then the push cards, Cobalt last is how I would do it. And there you have your attack modifiers. So you see, as fully decked out on modifiers, the Cragheart has a ton of higher damage positives. As we've gotten +2s, we have 5 +2s, something like, I think, 10 +1s. Really, really strong, especially for those area attacks. The Cragheart is a really powerful, really useful, and versatile character. It's a lot of fun to play. Even all the way up to the higher levels, he stays relevant and useful. Remember to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments about these tips and strategies and how you play the Cragheart. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and keep on gaming.